Hi, it's Kirk. Welcome to the ADK Rock and Metal channel. And today I have got the English Progressive Extreme Metal Quartet, Writhe, for an interview. I'm right in thinking probably, have we got the premiere, the debut video interview with you guys?
Yeah.
I believe so. Yeah.
The reason I was confident on that is you kind of just came from nowhere in April 2023 this year, certainly on social media. So the inevitable first question, how did you all meet? How did the band form?
Oh, well, this has been in the works for quite a little while now. So me and Rocco here were in a metalcore band called Orchestrate the End for many, many, many years. And then lockdown happened. We just went our separate ways. And slowly and slowly, I was building some sort of new sounds, new experiments, new things I was playing about with. And then it came to the point where I kind of messaged Rocco and got his opinion on things. And we were like, let's go forward with it.
Yeah, because you said, didn't you, that did this start as just almost like a incongruous collection of riffs and textures, and then
Just like any other project at this point, I think it's we're seeing it more and more common now, the sort of bedroom producer thing happening, where people just want to have fun and explore and make cool shit, and then that naturally just kind of attracts other people around the scene and gets a band going.
So how did you? So you and Rocco played in the metalcore band. So what was that band called?
Orchestrate the End.
Oh, good name. Orchestrate the End. Yeah, suitably quite pessimistic as well. Like the dark lyrical content of your song. So there is one song,
Oh yeah,
public domain, isn't there? What's it called? Chasm of Slumber. I'm right thinking that's the only song that people can actually access at this moment. That one.
oh
song.
no.
No.
People don't have any access to any songs at the moment. Chasm of Slumber is a short clip that we put on from the gig that we did back in Hitchin.
So is that? So it's not a snippet from a song called that. That's actually just what you call the collage.
No, it's a snippet from a song called that. Yeah. But we'll be revealing more about that in the future.
Yeah, because I like what you've done with your tagline, manifesting in corporeal form.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at your artwork and even the font that you use, you're thinking, what is this grotesque entity that's evolving?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So what? My first question then is, you've actually said that you wanted to explore a narrative approach of progressive metal into the confines of extreme metal. So for the benefit of our viewers, can we just go around the table? What kind of bands are influencing you when you're writing this music?
For me personally, there's never one band or one style or one thing that I want to latch onto and kind of replicate. It's always, you know, the more confident I become in the things that I make is when it becomes its own voice, its own thing, which takes a while. It takes a long time. When it comes to direct influences and the bands that I want to express the same sort of energy that they're expressing, then you know, bands like Humanity's Last Breath and Vildhjarta and Fit for an Autopsy as well, and then going back to the roots of this genre, obviously Gojira, Slipknot. You know, there's a unique energy that those kind of bands bring to the table.
Yeah, Simon, we were speaking last night. Did you used to be a drummer? Are you still a drummer? Because you're the vocalist now, aren't you?
I'm still a drummer by trade and stuff but this was, so I'd started doing like vocals about like 2 years after I'd started drumming. I just was doing it for fun because I'd been committed so seriously into it. But then like it finally reached a point where I've been trying to get into bands for a while for doing vocals, and then like I just happened to see an ad Seb had posted through a mutual community, the Tech Fest community, looking for a vocalist, and we just ended up having to hit it off really well, and everything just started kind of falling into place from there, which was really good, you know, at least for me coming on board for this.
Yeah, well, Cameron, what's it like having another drummer in the band? Does that lead to any disagreements?
Funnily enough, no. It actually helps quite a lot. Having another drummer's opinion that's obviously got different influences to mine is actually really helpful because he'll point out things that I won't necessarily have thought of. I'm not a vocalist, so I can't do that with him. That's quite great. And I mean, I'd love to do vocals one day, but yeah, and having a vocalist that also helps get your gear on stage is completely different for this genre because nobody does that. But yeah, I'd say it's more of a benefit than anything. If you've got multiple musicians in the band that can actually play other instruments that are within your band, it really helps a lot, honestly.
What's your background then? Because you're from do you still live in Blackpool? Because I know you said you're from Blackpool. Are you still in Lancashire, or do you now live in the southeast?
Yeah, I still live in Lancashire. I've lived here basically my whole life. I used to live in Manchester when I was in uni. But yeah, I'm Lancashire born and bred, and I'm proud of it. So
I'm here. So did you, Simon, you mentioned TechFest, which we know it's going to be the last one before they go on hiatus. Is that how, Cameron, did you get involved through TechFest as well? Is that how you met the rest of the band?
Well, pretty much, yeah. Simon's girlfriend, Rania, who was actually featured on one of the songs that we'll be revealing sometime in the future. She actually put me in touch with Simon, and Simon grabbed me and was like, we need a drummer because we can't find anybody to do it. And a lot of times you get asked to do projects and it's kind of like, oh, well, I'm busy at the moment. It depends what the music sounds like. And he showed me what the music sounds like. And I was like, for lack of a better term, I was like, holy shit, this is like the kind of stuff that I've really wanted to do for a really long time. It's super heavy, it's super brutal. And I was just like, you know what, even if I'm busy, I'll make the time for this. It's like the more and more I listened to the stuff and the more I practiced it, I was just like, this is like the kind of stuff that I want to do. And it's the kind of stuff that I want to be like known for as a musician. So to give a long answer, it's basically, yeah, it was TechFest.
Seb, now that you've mentioned Humanity's Last Breath, you're right, I can hear them in the music. I like the way you answered that question though. It's like if you ask a novelist who you're influenced by, often they'll say, no one, I don't want to be influenced by anyone when I'm creating. I get the impression you're the same. The way you worded it is, it needs to find itself. So Rocco, we're going to go to you because you and Seb have been playing together for over a decade. What's different? I know it was a metalcore band you were in before. What excites you about this project?
Well, it's the fact that, as you were saying earlier, that there isn't a real like definition of the genre, and the fact that I also have like different backgrounds apart from I study and practice and play other genres of music is more like bringing in what music is rather than thinking, okay, this is what metalcore is or this is what deathcore is or any other type of music. Is like cutting the ties of what we can think of as a specific genre and say this is what we need to do in order to tick the boxes of a specific genre. So what I like about this project is that it really started more like as a visualization of things than to be translated into music, and then how we translate something that is actually visual or something more visceral and then we turn it into music. So that's for me like the big the thing that really captured me too, and made me stay in the band and made me say yes, let's do something with this, because we really want to turn something, we want to say something is not just, as I was saying earlier, ticking boxes and just saying this is the genre and that's it. There is some substance to it. So, and we can express ourselves freely, like we just want to convey a message and just say what we want to say. So again, there isn't really like the metalcore way of saying it. Like I also play double bass and play jazz, so I can also bring that in if needed, So having that sort of freedom is, I think something special in this band.
I can definitely see that also is a progressive musical way of looking at things as well. I have to say, I'm not surprised that you play jazz as well. That's quite common, isn't it? If you look at it, two of the most technical genres now are obviously jazz fusion has had such a big influence, hasn't it, on extreme metal. Certainly a lot of that dissonant death metal that you hear these days. But Seb, when I saw the gig at Club 85, your debut show, I think what surprised me is I did hear that those panic chords, those dissonant chords that you hear in a Vilgiarto.
Oh yeah.
But you were
Oh yeah.
playing some almost luscious melodies as well. You don't really hear that, in that down tempo deathcore prog element. So I think that's quite unique what you were doing.
Oh, I just think there is so much beauty in darkness that we need to tap into as artists, and that we need to express and share with the world that, it's not a place of despair for people to be. It can be a very, very comfortable place for a lot of people. And that's, I mean, to go back to Vilgiarto, that's one of the vibes and energies that they've put out that's unique to them. But in this dissonant mess, this chaotic soundscape, and finding the almost the small light within all of that. I mean, for you to say that is a pleasure to hear, because it wasn't incredibly at the forefront of my intention to have that for this first EP. But I think, without lack of trying, it was almost unintentionally brought upon the table, just to have these passages move naturally within the music, to bring out this small sliver of light. And Simon also captures that so well vocally when he captures those moments with the ecstasy and the agony, as he put it, almost in turmoil within each other. And that's, I think, that's part of what we're looking for as a band to achieve in that.
So do any of these songs begin in, I know you said it started with you, didn't it? As, let's use that term, the bedroom producer. Do you
absolutely.
Do you envisage that it might grow where you actually do meet in a rehearsal studio, and then some of these songs grow that way? I mean, Cameron, that'd be difficult for you because you live in Northwest England, but do you see yourself?
100%. Yeah, that was definitely the intention. I mean, coming off of me and Rocco's last band, it was, I wanted to kind of take a break anyway, and also I was entering my early 20s. I needed to figure out a way to live in London, and the music just had to take a minute. And then lockdown happened, so then that was the opportunity for me to be like, okay, let's take all of this mess and just try and make anything out of it, a song or something. As soon as I had my first song, that's when I messaged Rocco. So it was always the intention to find a band.
Simon, was that the same for you? Because you said you'd been looking for a band for a couple of years. Why have you been in flux between bands?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, it's mainly just to do with my vocal style. I mean, I'm like, with my particular vocal range, like a lot of people for the longest time have been looking for that more, straight mid-range tone that you hear in a lot of like harsher, like hardcore metal and stuff. And it's just kind of dominated like everything. And like a lot of my sensibility, I mean, like, I'm wearing the t-shirt, like, Trevor is for me one of my OG influences as a vocalist. And like, that's kind of where I was my original starting point. So, and as you've mentioned, like the music's really dark. This goes to like all sorts of extremes, and a lot of the bands that, for better or worse, that I've ever played for in the past, they've been wanting like a combination of clean and extreme, metal stuff. And like, although I can lean into a lot of those sensibilities, it was never played to my strong suits. Whereas with here, I've been able to go as far crazy demonic sounding and bring all of that to the table with this. And yeah, Seb's been really like, I have to say, the one thing that's been probably the biggest relief when working with this project is Seb's like taken on like a lot of my input, like, because a lot of people at the times I've found, like, you can have the vocalist, it's like, okay, you're just gonna go write lyrics now and go, but due to my drumming background and composition work, like we've been able to help bring this all together, so they actually feel like some real songs, not just here's the riff salad that you can often find in the beginning days, and you have to work through that. So that's been a relief.
Yeah, because so basically what you're saying is you had opportunities to join other bands, it just wasn't right for you, and then finally something aesthetically as well comes along. Because you all, so again, one thing that stands out for me, even the way that you present yourselves on social media, that really sinister 16th century font, and you'll talk about chasms and an abyss, and it's almost like you're describing your music as a virus. Some of the language.
Oh yeah.
It's really, so when this we're gonna have to ask the question, aren't we? We want to know what's the time frame for when the EP's coming out, and how many tracks are on it?
Soon. And
all you can say.
the amount of tracks, there is a number of tracks, probably average you'd expect for an EP.
So we'll be looking at between 4 and 5, hopefully.
Maybe.
Yeah. So what?
Yeah.
What are the plans then in terms of touring? Because you've got this gig in Camden, haven't you, at the Fiddler's Elbow? Is that on the 22nd of June?
Yes, that's going to be
in the
really
band.
fun. We're going to be playing with a bunch of our friends here in London. Fractions, Averted, Vea, After Reach. And I know that they're more sort of metalcore, progressive metalcore based, but we feel really honored that they wanted, that they asked us to come on to, open up the night with some, hopefully, more brutal, sinister vibes. So we'll see how that goes. And then, in terms of gigs and stuff, I mean, I think we will be announcing shortly a few more things in the works. We just want to kind of play as many shows as possible at the moment, leading up to the release of whatever it is we do release, and just see how the train goes.
It's interesting there that you almost apologized for playing on the bill with metalcore bands. You didn't mean that, clearly. Because I was going to ask, like, why do you think there's a chasm? Because I'm the lead editor of a publication called Scream Blast Repeat. So we cover extreme metal prog, and I suppose you'd say dark avant-garde alternative music. And I'm 40 years old now, and I've noticed it, certainly for the last 15 years. Why do you think there's a chasm between old school extreme metal fans and then the modern day people, who listen to
I think you said it earlier when you said aesthetic. I think that's really what it comes down to. I don't want to go as far as to say there's a generational shift, because you see younger people now still listening to Slipknot, Limp Bizkit, all of those bands, as much as they're listening to Periphery or whoever else is in the new modern world of metal. But in terms of the aesthetic, especially when it comes to extreme music, there's a real point to be made about how much black and death metal clothing do you wear on a regular basis, or how much do you want to express that as a person, and how much you revel in that darkness versus how much you kind of put off by it, how much you more comfortable with. I don't want to speak in musical terms. There's nothing. I don't think it's a game of how simple versus how complex your music is, because we have simple and complex in every single genre. It's really just more a case of that aesthetic for me. But I'd be curious to hear what the other guys think as well.
I mean, as someone who plays also like an extreme black metal band, Ori, and I've been around like the block and stuff, I would say like Seb did hit it a bit on the head in terms of like in terms of where it comes from, with aesthetic being one thing, but I'd say it's kind of like almost that philosophical divide for some people in terms of what they're getting out of their music. I think you can find just as many people will listen to a song and like listen to a song, like a happy song to make themselves feel happy, or a sad one, and like when they're feeling sad. But those same people might not be the types who will go and listen to a sad song and get the feeling out of like somebody else has experienced what I'm going through or has gone through, and like I can relate and empathize with that, and then they gain strength and power from that. Like that's one sort of inflection. And I do find that it can also just be down to the classic thing of like, what are you in the mood for? Are you out to go explore some different styles of music, or are you out to go have a good time and just throw back a few drinks? I mean, not saying that you can't do that with both, but it's always time and a place, I think, for a lot of people.
I honestly think this decade even, we're going to be seeing more and more of those two worlds combined, and more of people just throwing genre names out of the window and just saying, we want to provide this kind of energy. And we're already kind of seeing that shift happen. Sleep Tokens, obviously, a massive example, probably the biggest example we could think of now, where they've managed to fuse elements of pop into metalcore. But they still, even though they have this pop and metalcore approach to the music, their aesthetic is, dare I say it, kind of borrowed from black metal with that anonymous look and feel about them. And then you have another band like Loathe, where they're a metalcore band, or they started out as a metalcore band, and now you can't exactly really say what they are, because they've put everything into making this new sound for their own. And I think everyone, the audience, the industry, was starting to take a little bit more notice to those bands that are combining everything and doing their own thing versus the sort of genre-specific bands, which there's still plenty of amazing ones out there.
Definitely, yeah. Do you know, I think both of you are right. It's as shallow as aesthetics, isn't it, as to why that chasm exists. And it is a generational thing, I would say. You know, if people my age who love Morbid Angel and Obituary, they're just not going to listen to a deathcore band because they'll take one look at them and think, oh, you've got short hair, you're wearing, you know, you have neck tattoos, and you look like you go to the gym. And they just want fat, overweight guys with beards and long hair and cargo shorts who look like truckers to be the band. You know, come on, Slayer, Napalm Death, great bands, and four ugly bastards in each band. And I think that's what came to define metal, isn't it? And then
no, metal isn't ugly anymore, guys. Come on.
Yeah, but people just assume, I think, with that mindset, it's like, you're not into our music. You know, what was the first? Did you used to listen to Obituary when they were called Executioners? So you get all this. What is the term that the Americans use?
The elitism.
Elitism, we say in this country.
It still exists in this new world as well. Don't you worry. It's it's very prevalent.
Because like you mentioned Periphery before, I actually love Periphery. They're one of my favorite bands. And
oh yeah, same.
You know, you show somebody that song, for example, Blood Eagle. That is a million times heavier than anything by Slayer. But if you show that to an old school Slayer fan, they're like, this is shit. It's like, what? What? You're telling me this is pop music? And
it's funny you say that because it's often the cleans of Periphery that people say put them off when they're looking for the brutality, but they're actually probably not that different from the cleans of Slayer. If you really think about it.
Just a bit, yeah. Just a bit higher, and he's not. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's probably a good point. It's just fascinating what you're saying there. Where you're right. I think we can look forward to the rest of this decade where we don't. When I was growing up, you had one mainstream and everyone just witnessed it. So you had to be aware he was #1 in the top 40, and you didn't really find out about progressive metal bands or extreme metal bands unless you read Terrorizer or Kerrang would cover it. Now we've all got our own space and we can just listen to what we want. That's surely going to help, though, isn't it? I think what's the term? Genre fluid, which I don't know if that'll catch on, but even
it's interesting though.
Music's becoming more extreme, isn't it? You know, the juxtaposition.
I think there's one point there that I'd say that's hit on, at least for me as a creative, that with the whole genre fluidness. I've someone who's vehemently believed that a lot of standard song structures that we've leaned into for a long time has sort of stunted music a little bit in some ways. And it's not to say that there's not as many good songs out there with, you know, your standard verse chorus play out structure, but in terms of things that where we want to take it, I've always believed that if a riff needs to go a certain direction, you should lean into that, because it will be able to let the song start coming into its own life and taking on its own characteristics, far more than just going okay, well, now we're going to stick the other heavy bit in here because why not, right? You know, if it needs to open up and, you know, let people be able to wallow for a bit in some ambience, or just suddenly jolt them awake with something that's completely different, or even just go for some smooth jazz, you know, you can. And I think that's one of the great things that we've really got right now, at least in current modern metal going on, is that there's this room for this level of freedom for us to keep exploring and finding new avenues to really bring out all these cool moments of high energy that we all live for out of this music, you know.
Definitely. Yeah. Cameron, can I just ask you a question? So you said you studied at the University of Manchester, or you studied in Manchester. Did you study music at college or university?
Yes, I did. I actually studied at the University of Salford. So I studied an undergraduate degree, and then I studied a master's degree as well, both in music performance. And this kind of brings me back to a little bit of what Rocco was saying before about, you know, writing music and performing music from a standpoint of, you know, it's not necessarily the genre of this is metalcore or this is deathcore. It's you know, okay, what can I put into the song that not only shows my identity, but also just serves the song in the way that it needs to go? And the same thing with what Simon said. We need to have a little bit of this genre fluidity, I think, for music to progress any further than where it's gone. Because I'm influenced by a lot of stuff that's way outside of death metal, you know, metalcore, stuff like that. loads of like jazz records, fusion records, gospel, hip hop stuff, R&B stuff, and that's kind of the way my drumming is headed. But I don't see myself as being a drummer that's really someone that's just like, oh, I'm a metal drummer or I'm like a jazz drummer. I'm just a drummer that enjoys music. Sometimes I like playing heavy music, sometimes I love playing jazz music. And going back to being in uni, that's kind of what I was taught is, just enjoy music for the existence of music, because I was taught to play loads of jazz stuff there, and they were like, oh, you've got to learn to swing as well as being able to do, your blast beats and stuff. So yeah, if I could say to anybody do a degree in music, I would say absolutely do it, especially if you do it at the right uni as well, because they can teach you so much about not just being a session musician, but being a better musician overall, and being able to see the the whole spectrum of music as it is, as opposed to having such specific genre divides and breaking these boundaries.
Yeah, and it's important, isn't it? I remember reading an interview. Do you remember that band Cynic? I think they're still going, actually, aren't they? Cynic.
Yeah.
The drummer.
C.
Cynic, yeah, because the drummer Sean Reiner played on that Death album, Human, which to me is like the best drum album of all time. He said, I remember reading an interview, and he was like, it was important to him as a musician to play at least 3 instruments, even though he's this world-class drummer, and he was playing bass and piano. Do some? I know, obviously, Simon, that you're now a vocalist and you're a drummer. Do some of you play second instruments as well?
I only play drums, so I've attempted other instruments. I've attempted piano before. I've attempted bass. It didn't go very well, let's just say. But I've always admired other instruments, and I've always tried to, look at what the other instruments are doing in the arrangement and be like, okay, because there's some drummers or guitarists or pianists that will just play in their own little world, and they won't acknowledge what's going on in the rest of the track. And sometimes it happens a lot in bands where you'll write a part, and you'll be so adamant about putting that part in the song, you'll be like, no, you've got to rewrite everything else to work around that. It's like, well, if a part doesn't work, you can't just be like, no, I'm going to make it work. It's a thing of, try and write for the bigger picture, make it cohesive. If you can rewrite a really cool part to fit with everybody else, that's going to make the rest of the band happy, and that's going to lead to better relationships within the band, and that ultimately just leads to you writing much better music.
Definitely, there's a point to be made about where the voice of the music is, what part of the music kind of leads, and sometimes it can be an instrument, sometimes it can be the culmination of everything. But definitely understanding and appreciation for your fellow musicians and instruments is of the utmost importance to me, anyway. I'm a sound engineer by trade as well, so to me I'm always trying to get better at looking at the bigger picture and stop tunnel visioning into just making the guitar sound really cool, for example, which I think everyone's guilty of for their own instrument. Everyone wants to make themselves sound amazing, but we have to appreciate the fact that we make each other sound amazing as well.
It is really difficult, I think, because as much as obviously it's easy to say, listen to the bigger picture, obviously there's a lot of times where you really want to put a part in, and there's a lot of there's been sections of, even with this music, where I've really wanted to put something in and it's just not quite worked, but having other people to tell you like, okay, that doesn't quite work with this, or being able to just hear the opinion on what the drums should sound like from someone that's not a drummer just really helps, because you're seeing the song again from a big picture, and ultimately when you step back and listen to it and realize that you've made other parts, like you've accented them or you've highlighted them or you've just made them sound 10 times better by doing a very slight variation, it just makes the world of a difference, and it feels great. So yeah.
Can I just ask, Seb, so you wrote the first, leading on from that, Kevin, so you wrote the first song and your first thought was, I need to show this to Rocco. Now, from my perspective, I'm not a musician. Rocco, you're a bass player.
Yeah, mainly.
I was going to say that, surely you must compose as well, because from an outside perspective, it's like, why do you want to just show this to a bass player? Does that make sense from a non?
Yeah, well, I come from that metal scene where everything was written on Guitar Pro, and I used to I probably cannot play all the riffs that I wrote, but understanding how drums would work, how guitar would work, and now we evolved into using the AW straight away. But the fact that at least I understand how all of the instruments can interact, and as I said earlier, like also playing jazz, so having all of that interactive and interplay all the time, understanding what's happening on one instrument and the non-vocal cue that you can get from other instruments, and basically being able to again understand what's happening around you even without being able to play the instrument per se, but having an idea of how everything could work. So I think also like having a different idea, because being a bass player, like we're not the most prominent instrument in this genre, maybe Seb wanted also that type of input from me, because apart from being a composer myself as well, I also have a different input because I see music from a bass player point of view, but then I can also understand what the other instruments are doing. So yeah, like,
and I know none of that. Honestly, I want to. It'll be really cool, but yeah, in terms of music theory, in terms of bigger picture stuff, I tend to sometimes rely on other people to remind me what matters in those worlds.
And ultimately, I'd say, like, just to kind of round that little bit off there, though, that like in this project alone already, there's been every time where like it's been team effort to make this all happen. It's not like Seb is the original driving force, and there's like, I mean, none of us would be here without him. But like, since we've all been on board, like we've all brought this music to a whole nother level, and it's like, we finally feel it's like, we're ready to start taking these steps out into the world and making it come to life, as it were.
Yeah, and
be a band.
It being this entity that's undefined, there's grotesque presence in life, which might not even, you said it's going to take corporeal form, it might not do. That's what I think is fascinating. I like the way that you've promoted it, deliberately kept communication scarce. You just announced in April, we're a band. You enter metal to the masses and deliberately withholding things. It just creates that mystique, doesn't it? I mean, I'm privileged to I've actually seen you, so I can judge the music based on what I've heard. So we know that there's an EP coming out. Hopefully there's going to be some more live shows. What is your main objective this year for Writhe for 2023? The absolute minimum thing that you want to achieve?
I mean, I'd say at least we'll get in terms of things, getting the record out, getting our teeth cut as a band, just so we can, show that we exist and get it, spreading around the country, at least to get a good footing for hopefully next year, where we might be able to play some much larger shows as things go and keep progressing as a band. That would I'd say like at least the starting point for us right now for this year. And then going forward, we've already got more material we're working our way through, and like things are coming together there. So
yeah, I'm excited.
Well, yeah, this
you love working together. I can see that dynamic.
Yeah, it's been a bit hard lately. We've all been working. We all do different things in life. As you know, it took a minute to get this interview set up, but yeah, when we can get together, it's special. And yeah, in terms of our goals for this year, we just want to crush it. We just want to, tear people's spirits and souls piece by piece, and then reassemble them, hopefully.
I think on that note, that's a great way to end the interview, by the way. You should have that as the next slogan, on your next post. We just want to tear people's souls. But yeah, thanks very much for joining me. Absolute honor to be the first channel that have interviewed you guys, and we certainly won't be the last. And hopefully in a couple of years, we'll be able to look back and say, hey, we were there first, the ADK Rock and Metal channel. And I'm sure I'll see you again live some point this year. So thanks for joining.
Look forward to seeing you.
Oh yeah, thank you so much.
Been a pleasure having us.
Yeah.